They don't respect kindness. They respect what they can't understand. They say they want kindness, vulnerability, openness. But the truth is brutal. The more predictable you are, the less they respect you. People don't honor what they fully understand. They honor what unsettles them. Respect is not born from being nice. It's born from being unreadable. When they can't quite place you, when your calm feels like it's holding back a storm, that's when they adjust. That's when they tread carefully. A kind man is appreciated. But a man who chooses when to be kind, whose silence is as deliberate as his generosity, becomes unforgettable. Because in that silence is a question. What would happen if I lost access to him? Mystery is not manipulation. It's emotional sovereignty. When people can't predict your next move, they begin to self-correct around you. They show up sharper, more measured, not because you asked, but because your energy demands it. You must understand this. If your presence is always easy, always available, always explainable, it will be taken for granted. But when your approval is rare, your gaze unreadable. Your kindness laced with power, you create a myth, not just a memory. Respect does not grow in the light of full exposure. It grows in the shadows of what they cannot name. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be felt, sensed, considered carefully. That's what makes you powerful. The loudest power is the one that speaks the least. True. Power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't rush to clarify. It doesn't plead to be understood. It watches. It waits. It chooses its moment, and that moment changes everything. We've been conditioned to believe that to be respected, we must explain ourselves over and over until we are accepted. But every word you overuse is a piece of mystery you surrender. And without mystery, your power dissolves. Silence is not absence. It is tension. It's the space in which the other person begins to project, to analyze, to question themselves instead of questioning you. When you speak less, they lean in. When you pause, they panic. That panic is not cruelty, it is control. Explanation breeds familiarity, and familiarity unchecked breeds contempt. But when you hold your truth in reserve, when your emotions are distilled, not spilled, you become untouchable. You are no longer a participant. You become an atmosphere. Let others perform. Let them over-explain. Let them exhaust themselves trying to define you. You observe. You let silence carry your message. You let ambiguity become the mirror in which they confront their own intentions. Because the most commanding presence in any room isn't the one shouting to be heard. It's the one who can shift the temperature of the room without saying a single word. The one who controls emotion controls the frame. In every conflict, in every room, in every relationship, the person with the most emotional control always wins. Not because they are louder or more dominant, but because they refuse to be moved. When you lose your temper, you give away your leverage. When you chase, explain, react, you are no longer leading. You are following the emotional map someone else drew for you. But the man who remains still, who listens more than he speaks, who feels deeply but does not flinch, becomes immovable. He becomes the mountain others must adjust to. Emotional control is not suppression. It's precision. It's knowing that your silence can speak louder than your rage, that your pause carries more power than any outburst. People expect to provoke you. They push prod test, hoping to pull you into their chaos. But when you refuse the invitation, when you remain calm while they spiral, you become the frame of the interaction. You set the tone. You decide when the conversation begins and when it ends. You are not reactive. You are responsive, deliberate, composed, unshakable. This unsettles people, because when they cannot move you, they begin to fear your stillness. They wonder what you're thinking, what you've seen, what you're planning. And that uncertainty becomes your power. You don't win by overpowering their emotions. You win by mastering your own. Because the one who governs his inner world cannot be conquered from the outside. They only value what they struggle to access. What's given freely is rarely valued. Human nature doesn't revere abundance. It's drawn to scarcity. The more available you are, The more predictable your affection, the cheaper it feels in their subconscious mind. Even if they never say it, they feel it. If your attention is constant, it becomes background noise. But if it appears in rare, precise moments, when they need it most, when they feel least secure, it becomes magnetic. This is not manipulation. It is discernment. You are not withholding connection to be cruel. You are calibrating access to reflect your worth. You don't offer your full presence to everyone. You let your energy speak in doses. A glance here, a pause there, a moment of warmth delivered in silence, then withdrawn without warning. They begin to crave it, not because you're performing, but because you've become a mirror to their hunger. Let others be emotionally loud. Let them overshare, overstay, overgive. You move like myth part real, part imagination. And in that ambiguity, they lean in. They try harder. They self-correct. They wait for signals you haven't promised to send. This is how you command value without demand. Because when people aren't sure if they've truly earned your presence, they treat every glimpse of it as sacred. What they must earn, they will protect. What they must chase, they will respect. And what disappears just before they feel secure, they'll never forget. Rules can be broken, but uncertainty rewires behavior. Clear rules can be memorized, and once memorized, they can be navigated, manipulated, ignored. But uncertainty demands vigilance, and vigilance trains the nervous system more than any spoken command ever could. When someone doesn't know where they stand with you, they begin to monitor themselves. They become more careful with their tone, more strategic with their words, more attuned to your silence than your approval. You haven't told them what not to do. You've simply withdrawn when they cross the line, no warning, no drama, just a vacuum where your warmth used to be. And now they're adjusting. Not because you punished them, but because your absence created discomfort they can't shake. This is how you recalibrate behavior, not with control, but with consequence. Not with force, but with emotional gravity. People are shaped more by what they fear losing than what they hope to gain. So instead of laying out a playbook, you become the test of presence that rewards alignment and quietly disappears when boundaries are breached. Over time, they begin to regulate themselves in your presence, hoping to avoid your disappointment, craving your subtle approval. You never had to raise your voice. You only had to create a silence they couldn't bear. And in that silence, they rewrote their own behavior just to stay close to you. When you leave the room. Feels it. That's power. Presence can be warm, captivating, magnetic, but it's still tangible. Absence, when used with precision, becomes haunting. It lingers longer than words. It echoes louder than confrontation. Anyone can show up. But only a few know how to disappear deliberately, silently, without explanation. And it is in that void that your true influence is revealed. People remember how you made them feel, but they never forget the moment you stopped making them feel anything. The shift from intimacy to distance, from access to emptiness. That's where power sharpens. You don't retreat to punish. You retreat to remind, to signal that your presence is not a given, it's a privilege. Let them feel your silence in the places your voice once lived. Let them sit with the unanswered message, the canceled call, the empty room. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because nothing recalibrates respect like absence. Your sudden stillness forces reflection. They start to ask questions you never voiced. They replay moments searching for what they missed. And in that search, they assign you more meaning than any speech could deliver. Power isn't always in what you offer. Sometimes it's in what you take away quietly, completely, without ever needing to return. That absence becomes your shadow, and they will chase it long after you've stepped away. They don't chase clarity, they chase the mystery. You withhold, clarity satisfies. Mystery captivates. And in the quiet spaces where you choose not to explain, you become larger than life. When people can define you, they place you in a box. And once you're boxed, you're managed, measured, and eventually dismissed. But when they can't quite figure you out, when your emotions come wrapped in restraint, your thoughts filtered through silence, you become a question they can't stop asking. This is where true reverence begins. Not from being loved loudly, but from being understood just enough to fascinate, yet never enough to fully hold. Give them fragments. A glance that holds too much. A pause that suggests more than it reveals. A single sentence that plants doubt instead of certainty. They'll fill in the blanks with imagination, and imagination is more powerful than truth. You become their creation, not just who you are, but who they fear or hope you might be. Mystery forces projection, and projection breeds emotional investment. They can't detach from what they haven't figured out. This isn't manipulation. It's curation. You don't lie. You simply refrain. You control not with force, but with absence of definition. Because the undefined cannot be dismissed, and the undefined can't be conquered. In a world addicted to oversharing, you become sacred by remaining unseen. And in your mystery, they don't just respect you, they orbit you. What is scarce becomes sacred. Human beings don't cherish what's always there. They cherish what they fear losing. Respect doesn't arise from overexposure. It's forged in emotional scarcity. When your affection is constant, it blends into the background. When your presence is predictable, it loses weight. But when your attention comes in rare, deliberate moments, it becomes a reward, a signal, a statement of value. You don't offer validation on demand. You offer it in measured doses, timed for maximum psychological impact, not out of cruelty, but out of strategy. Each moment of approval should feel earned. Each word of affection should echo long after it's spoken. Not because you are heartless, but because your standards are high and your self-worth is sacred. Emotional scarcity doesn't mean emotional coldness. It means emotional discipline. You are not here to give endlessly. You are here to ensure that what you give is honored. They must reach a part of themselves to reach a part of you. And that climb, that tension, is where respect begins. Because what is rare becomes valuable, and what is uncertain becomes irresistible. You don't need to beg for attention, affection, or loyalty. You simply become the one whose absence is more powerful than others' presence. The one whose approval feels like a rare season, anticipated, longed for, never taken for granted. When they never know if they've truly earned you, they never stop trying. Loyalty isn't given. It's shaped in silence. The most enduring loyalty is not the one you request, but the one you design quietly, invisibly, without a word. You don't ask people to stay. You create an emotional experience so distinct, so rare, so irreplaceable that leaving you feels like losing part of themselves. Loyalty is not built through promises. It's built through emotional patterning. The way you withdraw without warning. The way you reappear when they need you most. The way your attention feels earned, not assumed. Every small gesture becomes a reward. Every moment of closeness, a psychological anchor. They begin to associate your approval with their self-worth. Not because you manipulate, but because you are deliberate. You never say, "Be loyal to me." Instead, you make them loyal to how they feel about themselves when they're with you. You elevate them just enough to crave your presence and keep them wondering just enough to fear your distance. This is not control through force. It's control through emotional architecture. People will always remain faithful to the person who made them feel significant, but never fully safe. That subtle imbalance between reward and uncertainty creates a bond stronger than contract or vow. You are not their master. You are the internal compass they calibrate to, even when you're not in the room. Loyalty isn't demanded. It's engineered through atmosphere discipline and the quiet precision of your presence. You are not the leader in title. You are the standard they fear. Falling short of the highest form of power isn't loud. It isn't demanded. It doesn't arrive with declarations. It arrives in silence, as the quiet realization that your presence changes the temperature of the room. You become the one they measure themselves against, not because you said so, but because everything about you, your restraint, your timing, your gaze reveals what they are not yet. They study your reactions. They anticipate your approval. They edit their behavior around your standards, not because they fear punishment, but because they fear losing the sense of worth they only feel in your presence. You never lecture. You calibrate. You never ask for effort. You become the reason they exert it. Your disappointment cuts deeper than another's anger. Your silence reshapes their self-perception. They begin to internalize your values not out of duty, but out of aspiration. You are not simply a person in their lives. You are the mirror and the myth, a symbol of what they want to rise to and what they quietly fear falling from. This is power. Not in controlling others directly, but in becoming the silent gravity they orbit even when you say nothing at all. You don't lead by speaking the loudest. You lead by becoming the one whose standards echo in their minds long after you've left the room. In a world obsessed with attention and approval, the real power lies in restraint. You don't earn respect by being loud, overly available, or endlessly explaining yourself. You earn it by becoming intentional with your words, your time, your presence. People don't value what's handed to them without effort. They value what they must earn, what they fear, losing what they can't fully understand. When you regulate your emotional exposure, when you offer kindness with discernment and silence with purpose, you shift from being someone they know to someone they reverence. Let your absence speak where words fail. Let your unpredictability create gravity. Don't rush to fix their perception of you. Instead, become the standard they quietly calibrate to. This isn't about being cold. It's about being sovereign. Your energy is a currency. Spend it with intention. Not everyone deserves access, and not every emotion needs expression. When you stop needing to be understood, you start being respected. That's not cruelty. That's quiet power.